Good afternoon, everyone. Today is October 23rd of 2023, and this is a meeting of the Housing Opportunities Commission Administrative and Regulatory Committee. I am Fran Kelleher, and I chair this committee. With me today is Commissioner Pamela Byrd. Unable to join us today is Commissioner Linda Kroom. So we will begin with approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the Administrative and Regulatory Committee meeting of September 7th, 2023?
So moved.
I second. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And we have two items today for discussion under the action items category. The first is a discussion of authorization to approve homeless preference for 42 housing choice voucher applicants. And I would like to invite our executive director, Chelsea Andrews, to introduce the topic.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the public, members of the committee, and the HOC team. This particular item is one that we are advancing to the committee with hopes for support to also present to the board. And it pertains to 42 incremental housing choice vouchers that we were awarded by HUD because of our status in terms of being a high performer as well as having our high utilization rate. And this particular opportunity is unique. It's different than the other vouchers that were related to the homeless initiative that HUD moved forward because it does not require that the housing authority work in tandem with the continuum of care. Instead, it allows the housing authority to have an additional 42 vouchers and encourages housing authorities to adopt a preference of priority around individuals experiencing housing instability. And if the housing authority chooses to do that, the housing authority is awarded additional administrative fees. And so you will hear more details about this particular opportunity that we have. In addition to discussing the potential implementation of the 42 incremental vouchers, there also are some proposed changes to the admin plan that were published when this public notice went out, reflected in red, some of which allows for there to be clarity. Every time we have an opportunity to update our admin plan, we want to make sure that we're being as clear as possible. So there's refreshing that happens. So part of that includes those modifications. There were some streamlining changes. So sections that were in one section initially that got transferred to another section that we'll also be clear about, as well as making the recommendation to allow for a preference so that we can take advantage of the additional resources related to the incremental vouchers. And so I will turn it over to our Housing Resource Division led by Lynn Hayes. And we also have staff from our compliance team who can assist with answering other questions related to the admin plan.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Lynn Hayes, Director of the Housing Resources Division. Actually, Mita Lim, the Assistant Director, is going to present this item.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Hello, Mita.
And committee. My name is Mita Lim, and I'm the Assistant Director for the Housing Resources Division. Today, I'm here to speak with respect to requesting the authorization to create a homeless preference for the administration of 42 incremental vouchers and to request the authorization to revise Chapter 4 of the Housing Opportunities Commission Administrative Plan. The incremental vouchers were awarded by HUD, as previously stated by our Executive Director, resulting from the HOC's leasing utilization rate of 96%, which met the minimum qualifications to receive the additional vouchers. HUD strongly encourages awarded PHAs to establish local preferences consistent with HCV regulations and statute to reach individuals and families who are experiencing homelessness, at risk of homelessness, survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and human trafficking. As such, staff recommends that HOC establish a preference solely for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. HOC will receive a one-time $250 preliminary setup fee, and in addition, will receive $250 incentive fee for each voucher issued and leased to an individual or family that is experiencing homelessness. To switch gears, further, staff is also recommending modifications to Chapter 4 of the HOC Administrative Plan. This modification is to revise the language regarding three specified sections. The first is titled Local Preferences. Our current administrative plan references 6 current preferences. Staff recommends maintaining the first 2 preferences, which are reflected as displacement and residency. The remaining 4 preferences will be moved to the section titled Targeted Funding. Currently, they are listed as mainstream disabled for 15 units, non-elderly disabled vouchers, 10 veterans that are referred from the Health and Human Services, and lastly, 10 homeless families who are referred also from Health and Human Services. Under that section titled targeted funding, we will now add incremental vouchers. So under that section, there will be 5 total vouchers listed, total voucher types listed. The next section is called Special Admissions. Special admission vouchers are referred to us from third-party agencies. Currently, there are 2 voucher types that are listed in our current administrative plan, which reflect the Family Unification Program, also known as FUP, and then also the HUD VASH program. So this is the program that is incorporated by HUD, established by HUD, We are now adding the emergency housing vouchers and the stability vouchers under that section. In closing, staff is requesting the recommended changes to the administrative plan from the Administrative and Regulatory Committee. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Commissioner Byrd, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. I have some questions. I would appreciate helping me understand the distinction between a preference and a targeted selection. I can see how with HUD's recent move towards vouchers that the criteria is specified for particular populations of people, that the targeted selection is very appropriate because those vouchers, in fact, can only be used for people who are within the defined criteria from the particular HUD distribution of those vouchers. Preferences I think of as applying broadly across our housing choice vouchers. And so I am somewhat confused as to why we're calling this a preference, even though we're moving it into the targeted selection. And I imagine if I am, there might be some other people too. So can you help me understand why it's called a preference?
So the way our administrative plan is currently written, there are points associated with each preference. And so if we were to assign points to this preference in particular, everyone who is homeless would come to the top of the list. So as we collaborated with our compliance team and another coworker who kind of worked in the administration of creating the wait list, it was discussed that we should have maintained the 2 preferences which have points assigned to them. for displacement and residency. And then the wait list will sort applicants based on that criteria. As we then select for a special population, we would then enter that criteria into our software database, and the system would sort by the preference points and then select according to that special criteria.
I see. So it's a way of being able to call up the people who qualify for that
That's right.
efficiently in the software.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
How do we make sure it applies to these 42 vouchers only and doesn't get used across all 7,000 plus?
We would
HCD
create a
voucher.
separate property in Yardi, our system of record, which is only for these 42, and that's how we would track. And that is currently how we track other programs as well. So when we do our setup, we put them in a specific property type. And then through attrition, as we replace them, we know based on that property number to fill or not to fill.
I see. So it becomes similar to as if it were a building that was restricted in terms of who could apply there, but it in fact is a type of voucher and not a physical
That's a great
location.
way to think of it. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
The other groups that you moved to the targeted selections and out of the preferences, did they used to have points? Why are they not being treated as preferences anymore?
They did used to have points because if we maintain them, then they would come to the top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
So an example would be for the family unification program.
Right.
Wait, I'm sorry, I take that back. I'm confusing it. Let's use the mainstream, for example. We use that and assign points, but the more points someone has, they would come to the top of the list quicker. So again, based on the current system requirements, we only want to keep the first two preferences, so we are not calling up or selecting everyone from one particular category, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, I would ask for Darcel to interject as she worked with the waitlist administrator to kind of
Okay, thank you.
add to my explanation.
I would be happy for Darcel to add any wisdom that she might.
This is Elliot Rule. I can jump in here. So in terms of the local preferences, we have
Elliot, could you introduce yourself?
Right, and
yes,
hold
for the
on,
record,
let's
my na-
slow
the record,
down
my
for
name
a
is-
moment, please, Elliot. I don't know if IT can pin you or not. Didn't realize we had you on standby there. And let me ask the IT team, are we able to pin him or no? Because we've gotten started.
Yes, we can. Hold on a second, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. That way we can all see him as well as hear him. Thanks.
Are we good?
While we're waiting for that, I'm just trying to understand that, some people were moved out of preference and this is being moved into a preference and this, I totally understand the concept of the targeted selection because there's limited people who qualify for these sub vouchers, but I don't understand why some work better as preferences and others don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
There, now we can see you. Would you
Can I
like
go
to?
ahead?
Yes,
Sure.
go right
For
ahead,
the record, my
introduce
name is
yourself
Elliot
and
Rule. For the record, my name is Elliot Rule. I'm a management compliance analyst with HOC's compliance division. So just a little more explanation about why we kind of rearranged this chapter. So the local preferences are really things that we adopted at HOC for our voucher program, and they apply pretty much with very few exceptions, to the whole voucher program. So that's why we were able to apply that point system to those specific vouchers, because they apply to everything, or those specific preferences because they apply to everything.
Okay.
Previously, we had, I think it was a total of about 6 preferences listed on there, but they technically weren't local preferences. They were more the targeted selections, where we have vouchers that have specific funding tied to them, or just specific vouchers that have, specific number of vouchers that have preferences. Term preferences kind of used interchangeably here in a couple different ways, but technically those specific vouchers do have, sort of preferences tied to them, but they're not like tied to the overall program. They're just those specific vouchers. So we separated those out, and it's sort of a targeted selection. So in Housing Path, we would basically apply whatever, local preferences that would normally apply to the voucher program to those, but also we would set those a filter up that would filter out the other things that they indicated on the application that would bring them to the top of the wait list for those specific vouchers. So we just have a more efficient way of, selecting people in the system now.
Okay. I'm going to assume it will work and leave it at that. So I appreciate the fact that you have all worked hard to figure out how to get the right people, the right vouchers. I know that is becoming more difficult as HUD issues all of these special vouchers. It's a way, I suppose, of them addressing some of the political weight that they are feeling. And I am happy that you have been able to figure out a way to do that. So we'll try it and see if it works, right? Okay. There are many other changes throughout this chapter 4 that have been put in here. I am told they relate to HUD requirements, although I'm not sure which HUD requirements they relate to. So what I would like to do is ask that we consider the memo that you have provided, which only addresses the issue of the targeted preference for the 42 housing choice vouchers, and ask if there is a motion to support that going forward to the board in order to get these vouchers made up. And then we can table the rest of these changes until we have more support for what the rationale for them might be in terms of why we're making these changes at this point in time in chapter 4.
Commissioner Kelleher, I'd like an opportunity to respond before you make a motion on that. We can go through and provide details in regards to the other changes. They are the one in particular that I am definitely advocating that we move forward is related to being clear about the fact that we have and follow HUD's requirement of having a separate waiting list for our voucher program and PBV program. And we have been using that approach since 2020. However, the admin plan was not updated to reflect that. And since that is a federal requirement and one in which, and there are other programs that we have to have separate waiting lists for. So we need to be clear about the fact that we do not operate in the way that our current admin plan reflects, which is a merged waiting list requirement, merged waiting list approach. My recommendation is that we do move forward and address whatever questions you may have about that particular area. The memo does highlight that there are other changes that are in addition to the incremental vouchers that are being proposed. And it was also included in the information that was published for the 30-day comment period, as well as, something that can be discussed at the public hearing, as well as an opportunity for commissioners before the November 15th timeframe to get additional information on. Because changes in admin plan require such laborious steps with advertising and putting it in the news and waiting the 30 days, we would hate to lose the time and instead would prefer if we had an opportunity to answer commissioner questions, make sure that we answer whatever questions at the public hearing. If there's a need to have another committee meeting after or before the public meeting to answer questions, would like an opportunity to do that.
All right, I will say that what would be helpful in terms of our decision-making is if these are dependent on HUD requirements, that the specific HUD requirement be provided either as a link or as a parentheses after where the change is made. I would also remind staff that changing policy should precede changing practice. That doing things in arrears is not the way we want to conduct business. So I will ask that we work very hard to make sure that we bring these things forward to the committee and to the board before staff changes procedures in terms of what they're doing. We certainly can have additional meetings. This committee has always been willing to do that, and the full commission has always been willing to do that. It's tough for me, having read through all of this, to understand why we're doing much of it. There's references to general sections of the Code of Federal Regulations for HUD at the top, but none of, that's not really an appropriate support for what's happening. It would be much more helpful to our decision making to have what the specific requirement is that's leading you to request each change in this policy document.
We have, thank you for that feedback. We can definitely supplement for the board the specific sections. Again, there aren't too many, other than trying to make sure it's clear that we maintain the separate waiting list. Other portions that have been changed have been moving one section from another section for clarity purposes, but we can definitely provide that information and be prepared to give a clearer outline at the public hearing as well, that the committee also participates in, and walk through each of those proposed changes at that time as well. And that's on the 30th.
That would be helpful. What I would suggest then is you provide that information. This can be brought to the full board. We don't have to endorse it. It can be brought to the full board with the fact that we were looking for additional information for it. And we could comment in terms of supporting moving forward with the homeless preference for the housing vouchers as a method of making sure that those vouchers do in fact go to the appropriate population intended by HUD.
Thank you.
So perhaps that would be a motion that Commissioner Byrd might make.
Well, I guess I want to make sure that we are bringing forth the entire document, because that is what, when I read the material, that's what staff is proposing. Like, you want an approval of all of the changes that you've made in this admin plan right now, as highlighted in red. And then we can take it for public notice after approval. So I agree, I don't want it to delay. We've done this in the past in this committee, that due to the 30-day period, we got to do public notice. I don't see anything in there that really caused me pause. You've referenced things. If it's more just a matter of just cross-reference, some type of table, we can do that. But I want to make sure that we stay on track with meeting the public notice and all of that criteria. So I would like to move approval of the outline changes as presented to the admin plan. That's my proposal.
I am not prepared to affirmatively move forward some of these changes, and therefore I am not going to second it. So that motion dies for lack of a second. We can still move it forward for consideration by the full committee without recommendation, and the full committee can make the decisions with hopefully additional information that's helpful for making the decisions.
And just to be clear, the information that would be helpful for you, Commissioner Kelleher, is the links to the specific CFR references, as well as anything that we're recommending that ties to the CFR, making sure that it's clear that the reason we're making that proposed recommendation, again, really this focuses in on the fact that we're clarifying how we manage the waiting list, but making sure that you have and the rest of the committee has information related to the CFR section that identifies how you manage the separate waiting list.
Or if you're simply moving something from another section, please let us know
Be clear.
that.
Okay.
And we can certainly reference that other section from our last version of the administrative plan and see what's going on.
Okay.
It would be helpful to know why you think it should move, but most importantly, that that's what's happening here as Commissioner Byrd, would you like to make a different motion? That
I'm
is,
not sure of the motion that I'm making, but if you just said that it can go without approval to the full board, then there's no other, unless you're going to separate the document, I really don't understand the difference. They have everything in one document, and you can allow them the opportunity to provide that additional information to you, and we can still move forward with the document as it is and provide the supplemental changes or more information that you need. So I'm not sure what the proposal is. So they have all of the information there. It was highlighted in red and presented to us. So for me, it's more about just providing that additional information. So I don't understand what the
it would be a motion
overall
to
issue.
move it forward without recommendation.
Okay, then you just made that motion. So I guess if that's what you want to do, I can somewhat second it, but again, I'm not sure. So whatever we would
Okay.
like to do, Executive Director, if your preference is to take this and move the entire document and provide the supplemental information. I'm not sure if Asha is in the room. Is that some type of motion that we can make? Because I'm
Asha
not
is
really clear.
here.
Thank you. I guess the question is, in terms of protocol, is it that the board, excuse me, the committee would need to vote to advance something without their support? Or since it did not get committee support today, I would just continue with agendizing it for the full board? I've gotten the feedback from the committee on what they would need to feel comfortable, but is there a motion that's needed at this time?
I think you can move to advance it without recommendation. And that way you have on record what the committee is suggesting, but you're making it clear that there was no actual recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Does that make you comfortable, Pamela?
It's more you, friend. So if that's what the way you want to go, then I'm gonna vote, I guess. So I'm fine with I guess I'll second your
Okay.
motion there.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes that we will move this forward without recommendation to the board. The second item is HOC's 2024 legislative priorities. And we have all discussed that HOC would be better served if we worked together earlier than once the legislative session is in progress in order to define priorities that we would like to publicly support and work towards advancing legislation that would support these particular priorities. And staff has done a lot of good work to pull together a draft of what priorities should be. And I would like to introduce Director Chelsea Andrews to provide us an overview of the work that staff has done on this.
Thank you. As outlined in the materials provided, we have had an opportunity to do a comprehensive look at where and how HLC might position itself as it pertains to advancing and advocating for resources that could support the work that we do on a local, state and federal level. I will also just indicate, I noticed today, I haven't had a chance yet to read it, but it looks like the council also just agendized advancing their legislative priorities. So this is the time where this analysis and opportunity to be strategic is important. I am going to turn it over to our Director of Government Affairs, Ken Silverman, to walk us through what we are proposing at this time.
Thank you, Executive Director Andrews, Chair Kelleher, Commissioner Byrd. Really excited to bring this item before you today. We have done a lot of work, as you mentioned, and Executive Director Andrews mentioned, to go through the priorities documents of a large number of the trade groups that we belong to, our peers in the industry, other groups in Maryland and in Montgomery County, and to try to work with the staff across the divisions at HOC. And we have picked out 34 items across all three levels of government that we think merit the Commission's consideration for putting on a list of priorities for 2024. I do want to say we acknowledge this. This is definitely only the beginning of the conversation as we move through the year and the legislative season. And certainly for any one of these things, the devil's in the details. But this is, we think, a good starting conversation that would give staff and the public and all of the stakeholders that we work with clear guidance about where we should put our efforts in the coming year. If you could go to the next slide, please. So I'm not going to read through this slide, but just an overview. I know this is not something that HOC has done exactly in this form in the past. So why staff is suggesting having this conversation. Next slide, please. Again, an overview that Executive Director Andrews kind of went through of the process that we took to come up with this list. Next slide. We have divided the priorities that we are proposing into 4 categories: more affordable homes, more rental assistance, more supportive services, and regulatory flexibility. Next slide, please. So here is a chart that shows the items that we are suggesting, and we've divided them by the categories as well as the level of government that we'd be targeting. I'm not going to go through each individual item line by line unless you'd like me to, but out of respect for the committee's time, so many of them I think are fairly self-explanatory. Some of them may require a little more explanation, but please, if there are items that you have questions about or you'd like to have background on, feel free to please interrupt me and be happy to provide more detail. Next slide, please. And then one more. So this is the things that we are proposing to ask from the federal government around more affordable homes. And you can see we divided this into 2 categories. Obviously, understanding that, without a Speaker of the House, our ability to, advocate for things from Congress may be somewhat limited. We have also sought to identify items that the administration can move forward on without congressional support, and are, really proposing to prioritize those. And then, hopefully, if the House is back in session, we'll have an opportunity to at least advocate for some of the changes that would require federal legislation as well. Next slide, please. At the state and local level, our state and county really have been great partners in helping us to fill the gaps and develop housing, maintain and renovate the units that we do own. And so we have suggested some ways that they can continue to do that. One of the common ones across all three categories is seeking to engage with them about potential for surplus government land that we could work with to put affordable housing on. Next slide, please. And one more.
On that comment, while they're changing slides, I'll just mention when I was in London talking with the city councilor there on their housing issues, they are allowed to use any government land for housing. They can turn a post office into a post office plus housing. They can turn a school into a school plus housing.
Wow.
Any government land that exists can have housing added to it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And they have taken liberal advantage of that.
I think I mean, certainly Montgomery County, we have a lot of federal land. It's obviously a very complicated undertaking, but we think worth at least exploring possibilities there. These are changes at all three levels that we would propose around more rental assistance, essentially more funding for rental assistance across the board. We know that of families that are eligible for a voucher, a housing choice voucher across the country, only about 25% are able to actually receive one. And so any source of funding that we can get to provide more rental assistance to people, we want to seek that out. Next slide, please. Okay, and one more. Thank you. So supportive services, really the theme here across the board is to continue to provide funding for the supportive services that HOC currently provides directly, while seeking to expand partnerships with our sister agencies at all three levels to be able to provide more and better services to our residents. And then also sort of putting out an open call to our legislators to work with us on if there are properties in their districts or projects that they're interested in, and to help us find grants, earmarks, any other kind of funding that we can work with them to pull together. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the last category, regulatory flexibility. And here again, we're really asking that there just not be special requirements on affordable housing beyond what is required through the normal development process for any other kind of development. At the federal level, we're asking that Congress consider expanding the moving to work authorities to all public housing authorities, which would allow HOC to, through the commission, to submit requests for waivers. And I think particularly in very high cost areas, it seems like some of the types of waivers that have been successful from moving to work authorities have been around looking at being able to increase the amount of the housing assistance payments over the current federal limits, increase the cap on the maximum that you can earn to remain eligible for a voucher. So the ability to really, certainly not proposing any of those things, but examine them and have the opportunity to work through those. So next slide, please.
Before we leave this slide, one thing that I was surprised isn't here, because a couple of our neighboring counties have already done it, as well as other places around the country, is to eliminate all exclusionary zoning so that there is no single family housing only zones in the county. That is not something obviously that we can do, but it's certainly something that I think is probably one of the 2 or 3 things that can actually move the needle in terms of how much housing gets built to meet the need of the growing population. And I would like to see that included in what we discussed, given that Alexandria and Arlington have already made those decisions to move forward in that way, as well as other places around the country. It seems to me that it would not be out of the realm of feasibility for this county to do that. I would also like to ask, and this is truly just a question, a lot of this is geared towards administrative agencies like HUD and legislative organizations which pass new laws. How are we reaching out to Parks and Planning, which deals with zoning and deals with so many issues that impact the housing situation in the county, to begin perhaps even cross-education between the two organizations, or have some kind of ongoing liaison relationship that is robust in terms of us being able to share with them what we see as issues, them being able to share with us what they see as issues and or opportunities on either side. It seems to me that that's an organization we should build a stronger relationship with, given the role that they play in determining how much housing is built where, et cetera.
Well, we certainly engage with them on a staff level, frequently on individual developments, and then at slightly higher level, looking as they do their master planning, there's a process to engage there, which, perhaps, a starting point could be asking for a meeting of the two commissions to exchange information. Would be an opportunity to.
I understand that. I think that used to take place, and so we can look at the Open Meetings Act and find out if there are any prohibitions about having that joint meeting, or what kind of notice requirement would be required for that. But Ken is correct. On a staff-to-staff level, there's a lot of communication. As we were building out the strategic plan, we leaned heavily on the data and the information that we were able to obtain from them as a sister peer organization. There definitely is opportunity to develop even a closer working relationship moving forward. So thanks for raising that. And again, I think it's been some years since the boards have come together, so we can also explore what that can look like moving forward.
And even if it wasn't full board to full board, if one of them could come to one of our meetings and give a presentation about what they're doing, similar to what they do with the council, and in terms of their priorities and plans, and then we could do, once we finish our strategic plan, we could do the same thing and go to them and provide a presentation of what we see as our priorities over the next 5 years. I think that would be very useful and hopefully also productive. Great.
Thank you.
Okay, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's
Go right
fine.
ahead.
We're actually, we made it through, maybe a little faster than I feared. Anyway, this is the last slide. The issue before the consideration. This is not really a formal or binding action that the commission would take, and that the committee would be recommending, but would certainly be guidance for staff, and then we would put a cover letter on it to present to the various legislators and stakeholders as it is approved. And we're proposing, if the committee acts favorably today, that we would bring this to the November 1st sort of special meeting of the commission. And we were planning to bring it to the November 8th meeting, but the state's priorities hearing is on November 13th. So now that meeting is November 15th, having the action at the special meeting coming up would give us the opportunity to prepare it and submit it if that's what the commission prefers.
Okay. I would be comfortable with this, with the inclusion of eliminating exclusionary single-family zoning. I think that that's well worth considering. But I would be happy to hear from Commissioner Byrd about her thoughts.
It looks great to me. I like the format. I'm not sure, can we put that in there about the zoning?
And
Not
I would
sure.
actually, how to tell you what number it is, but there is an item under the
Ensure
first
HOC.
category, more affordable homes,
Mm-hmm.
under county.
Mhm.
Find opportunities for zoning and regulatory improvements that allow more housing development faster.
Okay.
So I wonder if we can, I'd be happy to speak with you, or if we can work on the language and make sure it says.
That could be a dot point related to that. That works. Either that or the ensure HOC has the flexibility to operate efficiently and fairly. Although it's not just HOC, private developers actually who are going to have to do the bulk of the building could take advantage of that as well. So, okay, is there a motion to move this forward with our concurrence to the full commission?
So moved.
Seconded? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And is there any other business to come before the committee today? If not, I will call the committee adjourned and look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.